My name is Rita Green. I live in Southampton, and I've lived there for 19 years.
Hello, my name is Cara Nelson, and I live in Sag Harbor. I've been there for about a year now, and before that I was commuting here from Mauritius. We are at East Hampton Middle School, where I have been a 7th and 8th grade social studies teacher for 10 years now. Wow, time flies.
We're standing at the main entrance to our building. I am a 7th grade English teacher.
As a social studies teacher, I always start the year and we always have a lesson on 9/11. And I explain to the kids that there will be moments in their lives where they will never forget where they were when something happened. And 9/11 for me will always be one of those moments. And so this was the first time that I had conversations with students while on Google Meets towards the end of the year who said, I know you always talk about living through history, but I never fully grasped it until we realize that we are living through it right now as we are going through a global pandemic, a historic event that we never thought we would ever witness, experience, or go through in our lives. And I remember starting off the year and they asked a lot of questions about the wildfires in Australia, and then they asked a lot of questions about the possibility of World War III. And then we started talking about what a pandemic is.
They would ask questions like, do you think we're going to shut down? Or do you think this is going to happen to us? Or, just all these questions that we didn't have any answers to. We were communicating with people in Italy and watching how it was unfolding and people being kind of stuck on vacation or stuck in a different country and trying to get home and then having their kids at home. And we're like, this would never happen here, right?
It was Friday, March 13th, and we were preparing kids for the fact that they were not going to be in on Monday and Tuesday because we were going to be doing a deep cleaning of the building. And we were preparing them for the possibility that we might be out of school for a little bit longer, maybe a week, maybe 2 weeks, and trying to go over some of the different pieces of technology. And then when the students walked out that Friday, we walked out as well, thinking we as teachers would be walking back into the building that Monday, and then not understanding and not realizing that we wouldn't be back in that building until the end of the school year.
I wasn't here on that Friday the 13th. I was home with one of my children, and I was a little panicked when I was hearing that this was happening, because I was like, I can't give my kids a book. I can't get in there. I don't know what to do, but it's only going to be for a week or two. And then we got the call that we're not coming back for, I think it extended maybe 2 weeks. And then we were allowed to come into our classrooms, I think, to just get some materials if we needed. And I just remember standing there the first time I was in there by myself, and that's when I just was like, I can't believe this is happening.
Luckily, we're a one-to-one device district, so they had a device that they took home with them every single day, but we didn't use it in the classroom. It was a technology piece that was supposed to aid our instruction, not the only way to instruct our students. So we were trying to, in the final days before we left, knowing what might come, but not fully understanding what was about to come, trying to prepare these kids with whatever information we could about just how to write an email, how to log on to a Google document, how to sign on to a Google Meet. So I remember very early on when there was so much uncertainty, it was prioritizing not the learning, but the social emotional aspect of what these kids were going through on a daily basis, and not knowing whether or not, they were going to be okay, or their families are going to be okay, whether or not their parents were going to have a job and be able to, provide for their family. So many of our students had to all of a sudden overnight become the adult in their family, taking care of their younger siblings. They were the ones now who were putting food on the table while their parents were frontline workers who were going out into the field every single day. And these kids were also the teachers at home for their younger siblings who were unable to utilize this technology because they're in elementary school. So I remember in the beginning, it was calling up just to check in. How are you doing? And especially kids, if it had been a few days and they hadn't submitted assignments, we had not heard from them through email, they didn't sign on to a Google Meet, it was, are they okay? What is going on at home? And what can we do to best support our students and their families in what they need right now? While also trying to figure out what we need in this moment as well, because, just going back to those moments of loneliness, uncertainty, of fear, of trepidation, and just not knowing what was to come.
I think they learned a lot about their own strengths and their own weaknesses. And I think they learned a lot about themselves as learners. Mm-hmm. Some who have outright said, I did better when I was home virtually. And that kind of, format just worked for me. I didn't have to worry about what I was wearing that day. I didn't have to worry about, feeling awkward in my classroom or having to sit with a friend or not sit with a friend. Or, there were a lot of students who really, thrived in that environment. And in many of those cases, they had a good system at home as well. And other students who said, I am so glad to be back. I never thought I would say that, but I love being back here. So I think a lot of students just learned a lot about themselves as learners. And I think that's a huge lesson, because when you know that, that helps you as you go into your adulthood. Like, how you learn, so then you can kind of like manage yourself.
Many kids didn't want to turn on their cameras because, especially in the community that we live in, the socioeconomic divide is so great here. And there were some students who were in their own rooms with their own space, who had parents who were providing them with everything that they needed. And we had other students who were sharing one tiny apartment with 15 other people, who had 7 other kids in the room running around screaming, trying to join on meets as well. And these kids didn't have that same space free of the distractions that others had.
I remember I had a student who went around town, and she was collecting artifacts of what she noticed that was like beautiful. And they were like painted rocks, benches, and some were beautiful and some were like striking. So like benches that were taped off, like do not sit here. Just sort of like coming together messages. And she had made like she made a photo journal out of all this. And then each student started to like turn on their mic and their camera, and they would jump in with, okay, this is what I was doing, or this is what I noticed. And it like opened up this conversation. And I remember towards the end of that conversation, one of the students just said, Miss Green, how are you doing? And I was just like, because my brother works at Elmhurst Hospital, and he was in the epicenter of the pandemic early on. There were colleagues, and there was like a lot of fear, and we were very like separate from our families. And I just remember a student just said, how are you doing? And I was just, blown away with that connection. And it just like has really come full circle now that, we're back in schools, and we're, checking in with everybody, not just with like students, but like with colleagues. And mm-hmm. I found that moment just really was like, oh, okay. I'll tell you how I'm doing. Mm-hmm. And half the time it was my 3-year-old at the time. He'd be running in and he'd be asking for something, or my 6-year-old needed help with a class assignment, or my 8-year-old was, struggling with a math problem. And, I was like, do you want to know how I'm doing? Take a look.
Confusing. I did not understand exactly what was going on in the beginning. It was really, really difficult. There were so many moments of fear, anxiety, isolation, and then coupled with moments of beauty. And so it was hard for me and confusing to process when I was getting closer to my family, when my boyfriend, who I had just started recently dating, it gave us a space and time to develop an intense relationship much quicker than we ever would have in the real world, where we got to spend all of this time together. And it was hard for me to process the dark moments that I was having, that the world was having, that the people around me were having, with the beautiful small moments as well. So confusing.
I think I would choose the word intense. And I think everything was heightened. The fear was heightened. The sadness was really sad. The funny moments were really funny. The tiredness was exhaustion. The moments of being up at midnight or 1 o'clock, like the constant, like there was no separation from between work and home and downtime. There was no downtime. There was no. It was just all time, all the time. It was just like everything was extra and intense. And I think, whether it was like hearing the news that felt, jarring or rattling, or seeing teachers on TV who were teaching from hospital beds, they were still Zooming from hospital beds, like everything just kind of like the input was intense. You had to be there for everybody, you had to show up all the time. It was just intense.